You are Superman. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Superman.
And I'm Sam.
Super Sam?
No, just Sam.
I'm Sean, sorry.
And Sean, we know it's you, don't worry. No one would mistake that voice. Okay, I mean, just laugh, that's fine. Also acknowledging that it's you. We're talking about Superman today, guys. You know, he had comics in 1938, and then he just kind of vanished.
Really?
Yeah, he hasn't really been seen, right? Like, since 1938.
Like, even now?
No, of course not. Superman's always around. He's always been around.
He's probably the most you're sleeping.
He's probably the most popular superhero of all time. Maybe Batman is slowly creeping up on him, but I think Superman is like world renowned and everything. I have many problems with Superman, and I'm not gonna really get into all of them in this episode.
He's got the Mary Sue syndrome.
I really don't enjoy Superman, and the only Superman comic that I've ever enjoyed has been All-Star Superman, which I'm sure like a lot of people will be like, well, of course. Yeah, of course, right. But like him actually fighting is not something I look forward to. Him being like the symbol of American justice is nice and all, but it's not something that I read comics for. I'm much more of a Batman guy and a lot more of a Spider-Man guy. So that's where I come into this whole thing. But I'm not going to judge this Superman game on the fact that I don't like Superman. I want to hear what Sean and Sam, what you guys think of Superman. So Sean, you go first.
Yeah, I've always sort of seen Superman as just like the generic superhero. I mean, I guess he's the first, so I guess that defines generic, but he doesn't seem to have all that much of an interesting personality. He basically just has all of the powers. So I never found them all that interesting. I also liked Batman more because it seemed a little bit more grounded, and Spider-Man more just because it was more fun. It just seems like every other superhero is better at something.
But in reality, better at nothing, because Superman will always be better than them.
Sorry,
you know?
storytelling wise.
It's insane. It's insane, actually, though, that's like a thing. Like, whatever superpowers, say, Aquaman has, I guess technically Superman has them all as well. And I know somebody's going to tell me that's not true, but I'm just trying to make the point of, like, you know, if he is every superhero, then he's really no superhero.
Whoa.
Wow. Anyway, Sam?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the coolest thing about Superman is his origin story. You know, your planet is going away, and so you get sent off to random planet inhabited by humans, which is maybe a mistake. But, you know, I think that's pretty cool. I think it sucks that, like, a rock is his weakness. That's kind of lame. Growing up, I was a big Flash kid. I thought Flash was always really cool because he could do, like, you know, he could run really fast, which I appreciated because I could also run really fast. Not that fast, but, you know, when you're a little kid and you want to run, you're like, oh, I'm like the Flash. You can't just, like, fly like Superman or, I don't know. I liked the Flash as a kid. So, I also think it's cool that he could, like, vibrate his atoms and pass through walls. Like, that was a thing you could do. They figured out how to do. There's lots of, like, time travel stuff with the Flash that I think that when you're a character like Superman and you're just kind of good at everything, it makes for, like, more boring stories. Because it's like kind of Dragon Ball Z syndrome, where you just kind of have to have, like, bigger and bigger and escalating kind of situations to make it interesting.
Yeah.
And yet his greatest villain is a bald man.
Yeah, who throws rocks at him.
With no powers, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, let's also take a minute to talk about video game superhero stuff. Like, you know, nowadays we have Insomniac Spider-Man and the Arkham series, and even, like, fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Injustice. Like, video game superheroes are big now, and they are going to be, like, big but not good in the future. But this is our first superhero game on the NES, and I just don't really... I don't know what the expectation was for me going into this. I kind of, I guess, expected just a beat 'em up where you're just Superman and you fly around and you punch other superpowered things and take on, like, you know, a classic Superman villain, maybe like Bizarro or, you know, I don't know who else is around. Anyway, that's not the point. Darkseid, yeah, that's one other one. There you go. I'm showing my Superman cred. You know, I think other than like Infamous, right? Like that's an example of another game I think of where it's like, oh, that's a superhero that was created just for video games. Most superhero video games now are just like based off of either Marvel or DC stuff, and that's just what you get. Where is the landscape for video game superheroes in general for you on the NES and in today's times?
I mean, from what I remember of like when I first started playing video games in the Super NES era, superhero video games was just going to be a beat 'em up. It was going to be a side-scrolling game where you punch, and maybe there'd be some kind of power that was emblematic of the hero in question, but the predominant mode of playing the game would have just been walking to the right and jumping and punching. Right, like now, yeah, like after the Spider-Man game on the Xbox and PS2, which sort of introduced us to like a new way of exploring a superhero game, and then with like Arkham Asylum, which sort of perfected the style of fighting and interaction with the world that would go on to dominate the genre. Now they're a lot more fun. They're just as formulaic in some senses, but they don't share as much design philosophy with other games than they did before. Like they have sort of coalesced into like this list of design rules that are superhero games, and like if you aren't a superhero, you usually have a different way of playing the game. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, the way I'm describing it. But,
no, I think so. I mean, you look at Insomniac Spider-Man, and it definitely seems like, you know, great game, stands on its own, but they learned a lot from Arkham. Yeah, they learned a lot.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of evolution between this game and the current state of affairs. But yeah, I mean, it stood the test of time. Superhero games still happen.
Yeah. Sam, anything to add?
Just that when I think of superhero games, I think of the first superhero game that I played, which was Spider-Man on N64, which, as I remember, I only rented it, but as I remember, it was a really fun time, and the movement was still fun. I think Spider-Man games are always just going to be fun, just because moving as Spider-Man is cool. And I was also thinking about that X-Men arcade game that you can play with a bunch of people. That is just a classic beat 'em up. And I guess that's kind of more what we were sort of expecting with this one. Not with all the people, obviously, but a single player kind of thing like that.
Yeah, I think that X-Men game is spot on to like how I imagine my 2D my 2D superhero games to go. You know, it's either you do that or you make it a versus game where you fight off against like a bunch of different
intermediate period where basically the only way you'd play a good superhero game was whether it was like Marvel versus Capcom or something.
Right. I mean, that has a whole line of its own, you know, because first that was an X-Men game, then it became a Marvel Superheroes game, and then became Marvel versus Capcom. So, like, that has its own story. We're going to focus on Superman here. As I mentioned, you are Superman. That is how I started the back of the box. And that is true. You play as Superman, and you're on a quest to save the city of Metropolis, which may or may not be Manhattan all of a sudden. And you have to save it from the evil Lex Luthor and a gang of criminals that were exiled from the planet Krypton. As Sam mentioned, that's where Superman was born, and he was shipped off here. Similar, no different than like how Goku was originally from planet Vegeta. Is that really where it's from?
Yes.
The name of the planet is his arch nemesis? That's funny. Anyway, there's an overhead map of various locations in the city that the player can travel to with animated scenes, but gameplay occurs on a traditional side-scrolling adventure way where you are switching between being Clark Kent and Superman, and you're kind of just like, as Clark Kent, you're doing your reporting jib. You're just trying to get like the daily beat and figure out what's going on in each mission. You talk to some people, you get some answers. Usually they're pretty straightforward, and sometimes you just get some slice of life stuff too. But
you were lying through your teeth. Like, this is the most disingenuous description of a video game we've had on this show.
It happens. It all happens, Sean. It just doesn't happen well, okay? But it's going to happen. You are going to start this game as Clark Kent.
Yes.
You are going to talk to your pal, Jimmy Olsen, and he's going to take a picture of you that you don't get to see. It just says click and then like fades out. You will talk to Lois Lane, and she will tell you that something funny is going on at Metropolis Park. So you are kind of like collecting clues, just not in a way that's very different from, say, the way that we were collecting clues in Castlevania 2.
Yeah. But the way that you initially described this, of just like, there are two modes of gameplay. As you're Clark Kent, you're going to be more exploratory, and it's not the way it is. It's like, yes, you will talk to NPCs and get information out of them, but basically you're Clark Kent and you punch weak, or you're Superman and you punch less weak. That's how I describe it.
And you have superpowers.
And you're like 2 feet tall.
Yes.
Everyone's 2 feet tall.
There's just something weird about... No, not everyone. I'll get to that in a minute, but almost everyone. But there's just something wrong, right? Like, there's no way that it was like a sprite limitation. This was an artist interpretation of what Superman should look like on an NES game, and it's all wrong, guys.
It's like a Cabbage Patch
wrong.
Kid.
Big head, little body. Honestly, like, I think there are, it's like a Funko Pop Superman is what you're playing.
Yes, exactly. It's a Funko Pop. And it's weird because I feel like if I can see the game like with relatively anatomically correct characters. I can see it when I look at this game, that it should have been that way, and it may have been a bit more acceptable. But like, you can get around it after playing it for a couple minutes, I guess.
Why make everybody so small if everything else is going to be gigantic, right? You got 20-foot ceilings. You got, filled with nothing, by the way. They're just the wall being really long.
Yeah.
And then the desk, and then the phone on top of the desk, which is the same size as the desk. So it's
People
like,
love the phones.
What is the scale of things in this place if Superman's head is as tall as the desk? Now, I get it. It's really not that big of a deal. They chose to do it this way, and that's just the way things are. But they tease you right on the main menu with a really good-looking Superman that you expect to play as.
I did expect that, because I didn't look at anything. I didn't even read the manual for this game before I started playing it. I then went and read the manual. But that really made me feel like cheated, because I really did think that this was going to be a somewhat competent game. Sorry, that kind of spoils me.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Because look, they design, as I mentioned, the 20-foot ceilings, right? With nothing going on between them. But Superman or Clark Kent, doesn't matter who you are, no matter what you are, you can jump that whole 20 feet. Like, you just soar into the air and you're very floaty. And I think that was just a lazy programming attempt to get around like certain obstacles and dodge enemies and stuff like that. Like, they couldn't make it so this way you just jump slightly over things. It had to be like this all or nothing moon physics where you just like jump over everything, and they can jump the same height too, so it's not much better that way. But this is an immediate introduction to the game. You start in the Daily Planet. You automatically recognize your size. You recognize the world. You get a feel for how this game is going to play and the jankiness of it all, to steal a word from Sam. But you don't get to experience the fighting right away. And I think that once you experience what it's like to fight in this game, that's the moment where you really know what you're playing.
Yeah, so I'm going to come back to the jump in just a second because there's a lot to say about it, but it's really best spoken about in the context of fighting. So you're going to leave the Daily Planets and you're going to go out and start to fight some guys in suits and they shoot guns at you. Your only real move is to punch. Whether you're Clark Kent or you're Superman, you just got to punch. Yeah, you've got a bunch of superpowers that are in your back pocket, but they don't really work here. So you either punch or you jump to dodge. And the thing about the jump isn't just like, it's not like a Mario jump where judging by how long you hold the button down and what directions you push, you can modulate its height. Like we have seen become a rule in side-scrolling games like this. No, you always jump to 30 feet that Mike said. And there's really no way to change that. You can try to attack in midair, and that sort of pauses you in your jump. That I guess you could use that to sort of edit your movement. Like that could be your way of becoming more precise. But in any case, like you're trying to dodge bullets, you're trying to dodge enemies that are punching you, and if you even jump on them, you're going to take damage. You're going to jump into bullets because you move at the same like speed as them. It really is just like a holistically bad design in the way that you that they have went into combat for this game.
Think about what you just said there, Sean, that if you jump and you land on an enemy's head, you will take the damage.
Yeah.
In the NES universe, that makes Mario stronger than Superman because his primary method of attack is jumping on people's heads.
That's true. I mean,
and he's able to do that.
That being said, Mario doesn't get to hit people from the side until I think the Super NES, but I think that just because like that still puts Mario above Superman here.
But the punching is weird in this game, right? Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, it feels super weird.
It's really weird. It just like throws out a hitbox somewhere in front of you, like right in front of you, but you're not really sure where that starts because the punching animation doesn't.
You don't see it.
Yeah, it's just like a thing in front of you that happens, and your guy moves his tiny little stubby arm a little bit, and then
one way that kind of made I was able to kind of perceive it was if you look at the size of your chibi Super Mario, I'm sorry, your chibi Superman, and you made his outline like a grid box, and then you sort of like mentally extrapolated that all around him. You kind of like if an enemy walks into the next grid box next to you, the punch would hit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. It's like if you're a square and your enemy's a square, you actually want to punch the square that could fit in the middle of both of you.
Yes.
And that's so you look like you're punching nothing. You look like you're punching thin air between you and your enemy, but that somehow connects and lands a hit.
The thing that bugs me the most, I think, is that in the comics, you see people shoot at Superman and then the bullets just break on his chest and nothing happens. You know, whereas this one, you get shot and you're like, ow. So, I don't know. That just bugged me about it.
Well, I also don't remember any of Superman's superpowers having, like, a limit to them. You know?
I understand that for the gameplay, though. And I kind of understand the bullet thing for the gameplay. But, like, come on. It's Superman. You're supposed to be able to just plow through people.
There is one thing that this game is trying to do, and that's the unexpected route. We talked about how we were expecting a beat 'em up, and they went with, an adventure game where you have to, like, figure out what to do based on talking to NPCs and stuff like that. I won't say it's a role-playing game, but it has some elements in there that I wouldn't have expected because we haven't seen them in a lot of games on the NES yet. You start off, it's like... It's chapter 1, you gotta find out what's going on in Metropolis Park, and, you talk to people, you have to get to Metropolis Park whether you walk or you fly. I don't know why Superman wouldn't fly, but...
Or take the subway.
Yeah, well, that's chapter 2.
You need a ticket for that.
Chapter 2, Superman needs a ticket. He can't just fly over the turnstile. He can't also just fly. He needs to take the subway. And furthermore, this is what I was getting to, Sam. The subway interior has silhouettes of giant people sitting
Real-sized
on
people.
subway seats. Yeah, like full-size people. So it's almost like they were designing a subway-based NES game, right? And at the same time, they were developing the Superman game. And then the subway-based game got scrapped. And they were like, oh, well, we can use these backgrounds for the Superman game. You know, like, they don't really work, but we made them.
Maybe it was like a different artist did different things for the game. Like the background.
I think that's what it has to be.
The background artist was not on the same page.
Yeah,
as
he
the
just wasn't in
character
the
artist.
loop.
Yeah. Like, oh, it's Superman. He's gonna look like a guy. And it's like, no,
right,
no, no.
and he's going to
looks-
fly all the time, so make the ceilings really big.
No. He
Yeah.
looks like a little dumpling man. You got it all wrong.
So I want to talk about the missions and openness of the game because I mentioned the Simon's Quest thing. I think that this one has pretty faithful translations. I don't think anyone misleads you or directly lies to you, but there's also some civilians you can talk to and they just say really funny things. So that's nice, slice of life shit.
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. But that, I think that is, somebody says that, right?
It's either I don't know what's happening or I don't know what's going on.
Right. And that's a very relatable thing to say
Yeah.
nowadays.
I feel that.
You know? But did you guys get this sense of exploration? Like talking with civilians and going on your mission? Like, was that helpful? Or do you almost wish they just made this like level 1 and you're just in the park the entire level? And then level 2, you're just at the next, you're on the subway. Level 3, you go to Lex Luthor's place. Like, did you wish it was like that instead?
I mean, like, if we're going to talk about that, like, yeah, if they executed properly, I would have preferred this more exploratory frame of reference. But if it's going to be done this way, I would have just wanted them to do, like, I'm just going to walk to the right, beat up dudes, go to level 2. Because I didn't know what the hell I was doing for a while until I watched some video of other people playing this. And I'm like, oh, that's how I use these powers. That's how I fly to the park. I didn't even know if the park was where I was supposed to go. But it was just as obtuse in some ways as Castlevania 2. Maybe even more so. I don't know.
The thing that got me was that when you use the fly power, you can look on the map at all the different places, but you can't select where you want to go, right? I mean,
I was able to select.
How
You
do
can select, but they make it very hard, Sam. You have to have the superpower turned on for your flight.
Yeah.
And you have to go back into that menu.
You have to pop the clutch.
You have to toggle through I think with the A button to choose which way you want to be, and then it like lights up that area. And then you hit the start button, and that cues not an awesome shmup style flying thing where you fly and dodge things or even attack.
Controlling him, but no.
Right. Instead, it's just like a cutscene of you flying.
No, I flew, but I didn't. I felt like I wasn't able to control where I was flying to.
Oh no, you can't. It's just a cutscene.
Right, but when that map
you
shows
selected.
up,
You didn't.
When that
select.
map shows up, I feel like I couldn't select it. Maybe
You have to press the A button to toggle through the different options.
I guess I just wasn't
not the D-pad. Yeah. But that stinks, and
Yeah.
it's funny because you can get around the game without flying. Like, you can walk to things, it just takes forever. However, some people recommend that because you'll miss some cool collectibles and power-ups and stuff like that if you just fly from place to place. But I wasn't trying to hang out.
I'm not trying
to
to 100% this game, yeah.
Yeah. So I was definitely doing the flying route. The thing about just exploring in general is certain dialogue conversations are reliant on the chapter, right? So a lot of times to get the right amount of clues, you'll have to talk to everybody again. And you didn't want to talk to everybody the first time to begin with because it was kind of a hassle because you didn't know who was going to tell you something useful and who wasn't. So that part becomes a hassle every single chapter. And then on top of that, as you travel through Metropolis, they put these little placards on the buildings that you're supposed to like make a note of, being like, oh, well, I don't need to go here now, but that's the name of this building. And if it comes up in chapter 2 or 3, I'll know where it is because I made a mental map in my head or on paper of where everything was.
You are a reporter.
Right, but you won't know that which buildings are ever important and which ones aren't just by like looking at them. You have to get to that part of the story. So the exploration part is more just like a checklist of things, you know?
Yeah, just
without the checklist.
Just brute force through every place that you've seen and do it again.
Yeah, now that said, some of the clues are very helpful, and you'll be able to figure out where to go relatively fast. But again, if the objective here was to make exploration and openness like a thing, right? Like you're actually exploring Metropolis, that's not the right way to handle it, in my opinion. You don't make it so easy to find out what your next thing is that you don't have to talk to everyone, but give the option to talk to everyone. But at the same time, also make sure that the player writes down every location and building they see so that if they have to go to them again, you know, it's like it's two ends of an extreme for a game that's already asking you to do a lot, combat and platforming wise.
Yeah, and I also think that there was a really weird, just going into the design of these levels or sections, areas. There wasn't a lot of information given as to like if you're in an important place, because there's a lot of buildings you can go into and they're going to be filled with mobs. And then there'll be one where you like, oh, finally there's some verticality to it, and you go down into like these basements and then you fight what is ostensibly a boss. But I just happened upon that building. Like,
yeah, same.
I wasn't like, I like, even when I walked in, I'm like, oh, this is an important place. It's just like, oh, I can finally go down or up. Like, so I beat the first boss on accident, sort of. But there's just so little visual communication. Like, yeah, you can talk to NPCs and kind of get a gist of where you're supposed to go, but the rest of the game is not in step with that. Otherwise, I would have known where I was, like, intuitively. Like, oh, this is like a dungeon. It wasn't.
Yeah, I can't believe that this is the gameplay loop of a Superman game. A guy who, you know, essentially, like, takes care of Metropolis as his own, and he's just kind of, as you, wandering around like a stranger, just walking into things and hoping that he finds the villains, you know? I can't believe that's what they went with, and it doesn't change, really, between levels, like, between chapters, rather. Like, it just, okay, here it is all over again, but this time, find the boss in a different location.
Like, maybe this game is just like a character study that's trying to get you to see, to sort of humanize Superman, that, like, you know, even Superman doesn't really know what he's doing with his life, just like us.
Even Superman rides the subway.
Yeah, and just sort of stares off into space, you know?
It's so weird that he's riding the subway as Superman. Like, he doesn't even change back into Clark Kent for it.
But honestly, like, if you were on the subway and a guy looked like Superman, would you bat an eye? I would be like, all right. You know,
I don't know the
that's
culture
true.
of Metropolis.
In
It's
Metropolis,
not,
it'd be
Manhattan.
weird, but yeah, in Manhattan, it's fine. And we say it's Manhattan because it's not the Statue of Liberty, it's the Statue of Freedom. And it's not the Statue of Liberty's face we're familiar with. It's like this kawaii version
it's like
of
Kirby or something.
Yeah, so that's all fine, but we know that it's the Statue of Liberty. And I believe in the Japanese version of the game, it's pretty much just Manhattan. Like, they never got the Metropolis note, which is funny.
Yeah.
There's also, it's missing the Superman theme song, this game. You know, from the movie?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Dun,
that
dun,
one.
dun, dun.
Yep, that's the one.
Dun, 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 dun.
That's the one when Harrison Ford was Superman.
For sure.
All right, let's talk about the Superman superpowers. Because
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I actually think it's funny because I said it's missing the Superman theme song. Like, that's something that you could just go up to people on the street and be like, quick, hum me a few bars of the Superman theme song. That's like, you know, a lot of people, it's just a different era, but like a lot of people also think that about Batman 1989. Like, that's a recognizable theme song. And it's like,
I can't think of it off the top of my head.
It's a Tim
I've seen
Burton
that one.
orchestra madness thing, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, dun, 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 dun. It's like, that's
the world.
that's a theme?
That's the world map music of Final Fantasy VII.
I think it might be, actually. I think
Yeah.
I might have been doing that instead. I always default to the world map music of Final Fantasy VII when I'm trying to hum music that I don't know. We have to talk about Superman's superpowers because I promised it on the show. I mean, half the thing about being Superman is having superpowers, right?
Yeah.
So he's got an energy bar that controls if you're Superman or Clark Kent. We talked about that in the beginning. You pretty much, as long as you don't get hit too often, you'll be Superman for most of the game. You do change in foam boots. I like that. That's a neat little touch. They didn't have to do that. They could have honestly just made the character, like, I wouldn't have been surprised if they just actually just changed the character on the fly. No crossfade, no animation. Yeah. That's just what you get.
Smash cut.
But instead you have to change in foam boots, which is a nice touch. And also adds for some difficulty if you like transform back to Clark Kent because of your energy bar. You have to go find a phone booth.
True.
You know? There's X-ray vision, which makes certain enemies visible. Yeah. Which is strange, but the manual explains that away. They explain that by saying, Superman is now unable to see inside buildings, as Lex has lined all the buildings in Metropolis with lead.
Even when he's inside the building?
Yeah, there's so much lead in the building that it's distracting his super sight powers,
that
so he needs
dangerous.
X-ray vision.
Because I thought that I was... Okay, so when I was in one of those dungeons or what have you, I thought I was either getting a visual glitch that there were way too many sprites and it was giving me like the sprites disappearing thing, or the game was just bugged because I did keep getting hit for no reason. I had no idea that that's what X-ray vision was for. That makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, and it's primarily used later on in the game. It's very important, I think, for... It's honestly, it's either Lex or Zod's people who require the X-ray vision. So you'll need that. So there's X-ray vision, there's super flight, which you need to be able to fly. And to be honest, it's a terrible idea that has like a meter to it. Like that you can only fly as far as your meter allows you to. So sometimes you can't fly that far because that's like one of Superman's big things.
Otherwise you're taking the subway.
Right. You know, it's just crazy though. It's like he doesn't, you know, like when you think of Superman, you think of him like it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. You don't think like, oh, it's his energy meter's down, so give him a break. Like, let him rest for a second.
But he can still leap buildings in a single bound.
That's true.
That's true.
That part's still allowed. Super spin. This lets you spin around incredibly fast and behave like a drill, creating a hole in the ground and letting you explore underground spaces. Great. Glad it exists.
Yeah,
Don't
I
remember
that in the comics,
specific. Yeah. I'm sure he could do it. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's like a big thing for him. I don't think that's one of his like signature superpowers.
Probably gets dizzy, so he doesn't do that one a lot.
Yeah.
Then we have the heat vision, which is his laser attack. I liked using this because then I didn't have to worry about the weird hitbox square between me and the other enemy.
That does remove that.
Yes. Thank you for that, Sean. That was good input.
I'm a good inputter.
Yeah. We have Super Breath 1 and Super Breath 2. Super Breath 2 lets you freeze zombies. Very important. Because there will be zombies in the game.
Oh, those are the green-headed guys.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't really like parse those as zombies. I just thought that they were some kind of monster.
I might be reading into it that they're zombies. They might be monsters, but I
So you're trying to pass off your conjecture as lore.
I think that one of the NPCs in the game tells you that Super Breath 2 freezes zombies.
Okay.
Like, just spells it out for you like that. But I like how the NPC character tells you Super Breath 2. You know, like they know the technical name of Superman's superpower as Super Breath 2. Don't use Super Breath 1, Superman. It's Super Breath 2. And also, why would the NPC know that, but not Superman himself?
They're just being Monday morning quarterbacks, Monday morning superheroes right now.
I hate that. Superman also has another superpower listed in the manual thing, but like it doesn't have a meter attached to it, and I think it's just for show. But it's that jumping one, I think. I think he
just like to jump.
Yeah, he likes to jump. Can we talk about the big bads in this game? Because, you know, this is the moment for me where I'm like, all right, at least there's something going on in relation to the comics and that whole thing.
Well, I know that Zod is a part of it. And I know that Superman is apparently very interested in what goes on with the stock market in this game.
Only when the Chinese get involved.
Yeah. Oh, so it's very much related to 2020.
It's like if it's just normal Wall Street people fixing the stock market, he's like, those are the market makers. It's fine. Like, yeah. I'm fine with this. Once Chinese gangs get involved, he's like, I will not stand for this corruption in America.
So he teams up with the SEC. I'm sorry. No, the FBI is in this game.
Yes, the FBI is in this game. But I think they're only are they for the stock market side? I remember them at Zod's chapter, but I don't know if they show up in the stock market one.
It's all a blur to me.
Great. You also have to deal with Lex Luthor, though, too. He's causing problems, too, and he looks deformed in this game.
They all do.
Yeah.
I know, but, like, Lex Luthor looks really bad. He looks like Boss Baby.
Boss Baby.
He does.
Oh, yeah,
he does. He's the one chilling in the park, right?
No. Is he?
Who's chilling in the park?
I don't remember him from the park. I'm thinking about the boss fight where he,
Kingpin.
brought up... Okay, that's not Kingpin. That's a Spider-Man Daredevil villain.
This was not in a boss fight. This was
okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of the one where Lex Luthor brings like his bodyguard to the boss fight and shoots. He has the bodyguard shoot at you for him, and it's like it doesn't matter anyway, right? Like, isn't Superman's chest made of like rubber?
You would think.
So this way he just bounces the bullets. I don't know. Then I needed to bring this up. In one of the chapters, the boss fight is with Jay Falk, a corrupt politician with ties to organized crime. Must be the stock market chapter. Here's why that's bizarre to me. Jay Falk only appeared in one issue of Superman ever. The Adventures of Superman, Volume 1, Issue 428 in May of 1987. So that means that, like, they were making this game, and they were like, we need a new villain. Like, who's going to be our guy, Like, we're... It's 1988. The game's coming out. They just announced this new guy, Jay Falk, and they're like, oh, let's put him in. He'll be a great villain. He's just a politician.
I mean, that is interesting, though, that like they're actually using some pretty deep cuts. Like,
that's the deepest cut I've ever seen in a video.
Yeah, somebody is actually reading the comics. So, they didn't do a very good job, but at least they put the research in.
Or they are going into a comic book store, seeing what the most recent villain is, or like the first one that they see, and it happens to be this one because it's the newest issue.
Yeah.
All right, sure, this guy.
That's entirely possible as well.
So if you get all the way to Zod at the end, I think you have to do like a boss rush with him and two other people from Krypton, and afterwards you get like this cute little cutscene ending where the three of them are like launched into space, and then like a different parallel universe like opens up and they get stuck in there, and then it closes, so they'll never be able to come back to this one. Makes you wonder, why didn't Superman do that in the most recent Superman movie instead of snapping his neck? That was strange, right? Like, just send him to another universe. You don't have to snap his neck, Zack Snyder. But that happened, and that's the end of the game, and it's also the same way that the beginning of the game is. It's the Statue of Freedom talking to you in the beginning of the game saying, go save Metropolis. And in the ending, it's like, you saved Metropolis. Very good, Superman. It's like very strange. There was a certain number of characters that can fit in the Statue of Freedom's text box, but it always gets like the important like last word of a sentence cut off to the very next text box. It's just an annoying thing. Like, it shouldn't have been done that way. They should have just figured out a way to make that last word of each sentence fit. Because it happens so often. It's like, congratulations, you have done it. And then you hit a Superman, period. It's like, no, like, just get that in there. Like,
well, my fan theory about this iteration of Superman, because I think this exists in its own Superman, like, side universe, is that this Superman, the Statue of Liberty, is actually Superman's mom. Because she just has a very like maternal nature. Like, talks about how she's very supportive of him. That's really it. But like, whenever I spoke to the Statue of Freedom, I got like a mom vibe.
And in a way, I guess, like, that would be his new mom, like, America and freedom and everything like that. And his dad, in some ways, is this... Yeah, he had a mom, and then he had another mom, and now he's getting a third mom. That's like...
This is the real mom.
Save some moms for the rest of us, Superman.
I think that's crazy. Technically,
Mars needs moms.
Yeah, wow. Deep cuts there, the two, okay. I'm being told by our audio producer that they didn't get sent to a parallel universe. They got sent to the Phantom Zone. I'm pretty sure that's true. I remember.
Just another word for the Shadow Realm, or?
Yeah, it's like where, you know, when Yugi, from Yu-Gi-Oh, when he finishes a fight against Kaiba, like, any of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards that died in battle go to the Phantom Zone with Zod.
The Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, the Statue of Freedom.
His mom. Yugi's mom. We never find out about Yugi's mom.
We never find out about his dad, though, either. That was his grandfather.
Yeah.
Who got, like, trapped in a card after giving Yugi his
I thought it was a
videotape.
Oh, it was a card, yeah, from a videotape.
Yeah. It's fine, it's fine. Anything else you guys want to talk about for this game? Not Yu-Gi-Oh! It seems like you were ready to say something until I said not Yu-Gi-Oh!
You may very well be right, but no, there's really nothing.
All right, well then I just want to, real fast, get into the sequels and spin-off section here, because this is not the first Superman game. It's early, 1988, right? But no, that honor goes to Superman on the Atari 2600 back in 1979.
Whoa.
That's a long time ago. What a bizarre game that is, though. Like, look up some footage of Superman Atari 2600. You won't believe how lucky you are to have this game on the NES when you look back at that game. And I've linked all these games in the show notes, so if you guys want to just check out the notes, you can click on videos that take you to YouTube to watch how these games play out. I do that all the time.
Also chibi?
No, it's not chibi. It actually has a muscular Superman, but as muscular as you can make. Better. Nah, think about how you could make an Atari 2600 game. We're talking about some squares, you know?
Big squares.
Yeah, big squares. Superman the game for computers came out in 1985, so that's 3 years before this game. And it doesn't look much better, but it also doesn't look worse. So that's important, and if you want to play early Superman games, maybe consider that as an option. Another game called Superman came out in 1988 as well, but it was for the arcades only. And that looks like the real deal. Like, that looks like a really good-looking Superman who flies around and beat up, you know, random enemies before taking on big bosses. Like, that looks like the game I want. And I know why we can't get it on the NES, but I would hope that we could someday get a port of that arcade game to the NES, like, with less graphics or whatever, because that's the Superman game I'm looking for.
All right, you got me excited.
Yeah, sorry, but
I choose to play that.
Yeah, just if you find a Superman arcade, first off, I think that's pretty rare. I've never seen one of those before, but if you find one, play it. You know, we could do all of the releases for Superman, but I think that would just take a long time, so instead I'm just going to skip right ahead. Superman 64 needs to be mentioned. It's considered one of the worst games of all time.
Is that really a sequel, though?
Like... No, none of these are sequels, but this is section's called sequels and spin-offs. So
sure.
Technically... What would sequels, spinoffs, and legacy? Is that what you want it to be called?
I mean, that would be that would be more accurate, I guess.
There's no alliteration in that, so I reject it. Anyway, Superman 64. We have to mention that game. It's considered one of the worst. I don't know if it's actually really even that bad. I played the game. Yeah, it's really not good, but I can't imagine, like, if I had my choice between Superman 64 for the rest of my days or this, can't say for certain I'd know which one I'm going to pick ahead of time. And it's also not called Superman 64. It's actually called The New Adventures of Superman. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people just call it Superman 64. It never says that anywhere.
That's peculiar.
Would you believe me if I said that the last Superman game, like ever, was released in 2006? We haven't had a Superman game where it's Superman, you know, like we've had him in other games like Lego games or in Injustice and stuff like that. But the last Superman game was in 2006 for the movie Superman Returns.
I had no idea. I can't even like visualize the game though. So I do believe you because I
think it's got to be like a Spider-Man 2 style thing, you know, where you just have like the whole city of Metropolis to explore, but nothing really happens and all the fights are terrible.
Sounds cool.
Which leads me to my final question, not a sequel and spin-off thing, but how do you make a Superman game? I think like the most common idea that I see is just make him super powerful like he is, like totally acknowledge that the guy is invincible. And instead, the game is dependent on like the health of the city, you know? So like Superman constantly has to make sure that like crime is low, no one's dying, Lex Luthor's not getting away with his plans, the other villains aren't getting away with their plans. If someone from Krypton shows up, he can take them down. Like, I think that's a pretty neat idea. I'm open to other ideas though.
I can see it as a kind of shmup, you know, where you
I'm listening. You have my attention.
Have all these powers, and you have to use certain powers to clear certain obstacles. Otherwise, you can't get through. And so it's like a strategic shmup. That's my thing.
I could see that. I mean, you know what? That's different because I bet that's never been done yet. A Superman shmup, and I wouldn't mind it.
All right, so I guess I've got a little more of a goofball answer, but I haven't played this game, but I've heard a lot of things about it. The game Catherine, where it's sort of like a dating sim, but also like a puzzle game. From what I gather.
No, you're right. I played a little bit of it.
Okay, so the dating sim is Lois Lane, just trying to get Lois, and then like the puzzle elements are like, you know, you being a super powered person, and like because in that game like failure by getting beat up by random dudes isn't really a thing. It kind of makes more sense that would just be more of like a mind thing. So it would be more like Catherine.
Wow, I love that answer.
I got another one. I think
Go for it.
Now that I think about it, I think that Superman could be good in VR. I feel like that would be a fun kind of VR game. You know, flying around, you have your laser blast, so you're moving your head to aim. I don't know.
I like that.
No,
I would
see
play
that.
that.
I see that because that could be like a short thing, you know, where it's more like just
or
experience.
Like a playground toy.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Experience being Superman.
Yeah, you're like God complex kind of the game.
I mean, I would just use it to like laser beam eye like a skyscraper in half and be evil Superman.
Totally.
But, yeah.
Well, we have to decide if the game is good or bad. Not good or evil. No game has ever been voted evil on the Essential Games list, but we do vote if they're good or bad, essential or not. And we're going to do that right now on the Essential Games list. So remember, the game can't be evil. Just because I said that we don't vote it that way earlier doesn't mean like, oh, now I'm going to vote this one to be evil. You can't do that. It's either yes or no. It's an essential game or not. Sam, I'd love for you to start us off.
This game is evil.
Now, see, there you go. You did the thing that I told you not to do.
This game is all sorts of weird jank. It's just a weird kind of, why is this the way it is, the game? And I don't know. It's not a great game there's a lot in there, but it just is all kind of connected in these weird ways that don't really make sense, and it doesn't feel good to play. So I'm going to say, wait for it, not essential.
Nuff said there, Sam. Nuff said. Sean?
Yeah, one thing I didn't get to mention when we were actually talking about the game was also, aside from its weird visual style, is that this is also just a terrible looking game. Like it almost, I'm not going to call it Popeye, nothing's Popeye, but it's from that era. And I know that that's only a part of what makes a game, but especially in this era, it's a pretty big deal. That being said, its multitude of design faults and goofball decisions on how you're going to be a superhero, a very, very vulnerable superhero, it just doesn't work. Like I don't enjoy playing as Chibi Superman. So that being said, this is an unessential game, inessential for show.
Okay, I love it. Inessential, unessential, doesn't matter. It's not getting on the games list now because 2 people have voted it off. I will just add that the game is definitely not essential. It has a lot in it, and it could be a long game. For even for speedrunners, it seems like it's a pretty long game. But the game is missing one thing. It has a lot of everything else. It's missing the power of being Superman. It actually forgot that the whole thing about Superman is how incredible and awesome he is. And also how much fun it would be to be him. This game has none of that. This actually feels like you're playing, going back to the Catherine thing there for a second, John, it feels like you're playing Superman's nightmare the entire time. Like, he can't really, he's small, he's scrawny, he has an energy bar for everything, so he has to conserve his power. He punches, and the punches don't really he's punching the air.
He
and
loses
that's,
his
maybe
powers
doing
if
something.
He gets beat up too much also.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So, we've used this is not the game, this is the game's nightmare analogy before for things, but I think it also fits here, so we'll see it again for sure. When I say that Sesame Street 123 isn't Sesame Street 123, it's Sesame Street 123's nightmare, you'll know what I mean after we talk about it for 50 minutes. And we've been talking about this game for 50 minutes, so I think it's time that we stop talking about this game, start thinking about good games. Got a game next week called Xenophobe. I don't like that.
I don't like that.
I don't like the name of that game, but I doubt it has anything to do with what a dictionary might imply there. So I'm sure it's just going to be a game. Maybe it's about
scary aliens from outer space.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's about being xenophobic towards those aliens.
Maybe it's about confronting your biases.
Anyway, any way you slice it, it's going to be better than what it sounds like because it's a brand new year of nostalgia, baby. We're in 2021 now, and we're going to be in 2021 for another 51 weeks. So if you want 51 more great episodes to come up, and you're like, well, Xenophobe's just not cutting it, don't worry. We have games like Zelda 2, Mega Man 2, Super Mario Brothers 2. Nope, that was last year. Go back and listen to that one. But there will be other 2s, I'm sure of it. This is going 1989. When we're almost there, when that happens, I'm sure it'll be the land of sequels for NES games, because that'll just be enough time that all of these games that have been deemed hits for the NES, I imagine that now it'll be like, oh cool, we've had enough time to make those sequels. So look out for those. Look out for Nostalgia. Look out for us on Twitter at NostalgiaCast, and look out for me. If you run into me on the street, look out for me. Just watch out. My name is Michael Esposito. I'm at Esposito
Do
Film
not
on Twitter.
run into him.
And do not run into me. I will run into you. Goodbye.